God is a good, good Father. And the team, we decided that I would share my path to Christ with you today. I only do that for two reasons. One is to teach, and the second is to encourage. I have spoken what I'm going to share with you, to many high schools, junior highs, FCA groups, and youth groups, okay? And even church groups. But I've never done it with my own family, all right? So here's what I want to tell you. When I'm done, oftentimes people will come up and say something to me like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry. Please understand, that's not what today is for. All right, so please don't do that today. I'm going to share what God has brought me out of with you, okay? And it's for glorifying Him and giving Him the praise and the glory, all right? So if you'll extend that to me, please don't do that today, all right? God is a good, good Father. The message today is entitled Renovated. I don't know if you've ever watched a show called Fixer Upper. Have you seen that show? That's a show that's done on television, and Chip and Joanna Gaines are a part of that. And they take old, dilapidated houses. We might have a picture of one for you. My favorite one is Pawpaw's house. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. But Pawpaw's house, that's what it looked like when they got a hold of it. And when they went through it, the floors, the holes in the floor, the place is destroyed on the inside. Most people would look at that and say, just knock it down. And as a matter of fact, Chip and Joanna thought the very same thing. But the owners, they really wanted to redo that house. And so Chip and Joanna renovated that house. And we have a picture of the finished product there. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. And inside is so appealing and so beautiful. And it hardly even looks like the same structure. And oftentimes people will say, it's not the same house. Well, it's kind of the same house. It's got the same footprint for the most part, but it's been completely renovated. And that's what Jesus Christ can do in our hearts today. We've heard stories about that renovation. Okay, and oftentimes we come into churches and we say, well, I'm not good enough for God. Well, let's take a look in Matthew chapter 1. In Matthew chapter 1, and I'm not going to read this to you, but it is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the history of His family. And I hope we have it. Did we put that up there? I think we did. There are a lot of characters in Jesus' family. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. I'm not going to read it to you, but if you take a look down through there, I've highlighted a few names. First, there's Abraham. Abraham, of course, is considered the father of Father Abraham. God told him that He was going to give him a son through his wife Sarah. Abraham wasn't patient, and you know what Abraham did? We all know this. Him and his wife got together, and they developed a plan, and Abraham had a child through Sarah's maidservant. He thought he needed to help God out. That's what he thought. He's in the genealogy. Then there's Jacob. Jacob lied to his dad, tricked his dad, and stole his birthright from his brother. So that's not a good behavior. That's what Jacob did. And then there's Judah. Judah had a son, and the son got married to Tamar. Tamar is the next one there. And Judah and Tamar got together, okay? Tamar painted herself up as a prostitute, and then she got Judah drunk, tricked him, and they had children, okay? So that's another person that is in Jesus' genealogy. Then we have Rahab. Rahab was a harlot. That's a prostitute. Then we have Ruth. Ruth was not even an Israelite. She was a Moabite and worshipped idols. Then, of course, we have David, and we all know David. David committed adultery with Bathsheba. And David actually murdered someone. He murdered Uriah. You'll notice Bathsheba's name is there, but kind of. It says, by the wife of Uriah. That's Bathsheba. They are in the lineage. There are good people. Jehoshaphat was kind of a good guy, so that's a good thing. And let's move to the next one. I think there's one more slide here. Manasseh. Manasseh one of the writers said he's just the personification of evil. And these people were in Jesus' lineage. So they were good people and they were evil, bad people. And that tells us that Jesus can use anybody in any state that He wants to do amazing things. Because that's what He did. He brought through that lineage His Son, Jesus Christ. And we have one more verse up here. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17 is the verse that we're going to focus on today. And that it tells us that therefore, if anyone is in Christ, if you're saved, He's a new creation. The old has passed away, and behold, the new has come. I was born in 1964 in Portland, Maine. I was at that time the youngest of 3 boys. Shortly after that, my mother and father divorced, and my mother married another man, and within 2 months had another child, and I was ultimately, the middle child of 2 older full brothers and 2 younger half-sisters. Of those 5 children, I was the only one that was given away for adoption. How many of you know somebody who's adopted? How many of you know somebody who's been adopted twice? How many of you know somebody who's been adopted 3 times? You now know somebody who's been adopted 3 times. I was given up for adoption. I was the only one of 5 children. The reason I was given up for adoption is because I was a violent, destructive, and pretty mean, aggressive child. Don't really know why those things happened. I'm going to share some stories so that you will understand when I say that I was this way. I can recall waking up in the middle of the night, running through the house. I only required just minimal sleep. Running through the house and destroying things. I would climb up in the bathroom on the sink, and we used to have vanities with the doors on them, and I would hang on the door until it broke off the wall. And then I would take everything out of it, makeup and things, and I'd paint the walls in the bathroom. I was always, for a little guy, I was always fairly strong for that age. I took a chair and beat it against the wall until the wall busted through the plaster. In our house, just outside, there was a playground. We must have lived near a park, and I can still recall being on the playground, and I was, my older brother would be on the teeter-totter with me, and you know that trick where you'd get on the bottom and you'd jump off and they'd fall down. I would do that all the time. I would knock kids off swings. I would get in fights on the playground. And I would be banished to the attic of our home, and I would be upstairs in the attic, and I'd be looking out the window wondering why I couldn't be on the playground. Probably a couple of the worst things that made my parents decide that they didn't want me anymore was I had a little sister in a high chair, and my mother would always stand at the door jamb, and she would be leaning against the wall talking on the phone, drinking a bottle of Pepsi. Kids' phones used to have cords on them, so you couldn't wander, okay? She would stand there, and she would drink a bottle of Pepsi, and the bottles were always glass at that time, if you recall, and she would set it down on the high chair. And it was always fascinating, and I've always been a very ethereal person mentally. I would always think and try to process and try to figure things out. So I ran over to the high chair, and I would take the high chair with both hands, and I would tilt it. And then I would tilt it until it would fall down, and I would study how long that pop bottle would stay connected to that tray. That was important to me. What was not important to me is that my little sister was in that chair. And I would do that on a number of occasions. My older brother and I, we would get in tremendous fights, and even though he was a year older, I was much more aggressive than he. And one time I took a curtain rod, I think it was a shower curtain rod, and I shoved it in his throat because I wanted to win the battle. There were some other things that happened in that home that are kind of difficult to share, and so we won't do that today. But at some point in time, my mother decided I could no longer live there. And so of the 5 children, I was the only one that was given away for adoption. I spent some time in adoption. I was in 15 school districts from kindergarten through 3rd grade, and I skipped 1st grade. That's an interesting story. When I was young, I was very street smart. When you live on the streets, because I spent some time on the streets, you can become street smart. And I was sitting at the school. I remember this is kind of funny. My foster mother was taking me into school to enroll me, but I had bumped around to so many schools so long and so fast that the records couldn't keep up, right? You know, they couldn't keep up because one of the schools was in Texas, and if you try to get records from Texas, it can take 6 months. And so I was there, and I was sitting in the front of the school, and I heard the secretary say to the foster mother, well, just ask him. He'll tell you what grade he's supposed to be in. And I had just finished kindergarten, so she came over to me, and she got down in front of me, and she said, Rich, now what grade are you supposed to be in? 2nd? And so if you check out my transcripts, it has all these beautiful report cards in kindergarten and 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, and in 1st grade it says P. That's all it says on there. So I moved on. But I was gifted academically, so they didn't move me back when they finally got my records. So that's how I completely skipped 1st grade. I finally went into foster care, and that was difficult. The abuses were phenomenal. I have been beaten with boards. I've been beaten with wooden spoons in bulk. I've been beaten with chains, garden hoses, a chair. I was assaulted with a car. I have been pushed down flights of stairs, shoved down flights of stairs, and at least one of the flights was cement. That didn't feel so good. You don't bounce very well. There's no give when you're going down those stairs. One time I was a father who just absolutely hated me, threw me into the side of a table, and I got a cut about in here. And now that life has pulled my hair back for me, it's starting to show, and I bled everywhere. If you've ever been hit in the head or had a haircut, you know that happens. The mother was screaming, "We've got to get him to the hospital. We got to get him to the hospital." And the father said, "I'm not spending a dime on that, such and such and such and such." So they just put tape over it, and eventually it did stop bleeding. They shoved me in. They put me in a trash compactor, and they turned it on. And I find somebody. I'm guessing the mother got guilty, felt a guilty conscience, and screamed. And they finally shut the trash compactor off and took me out. I do have sustained back issues because of that, even today at 52. And then I got mean, and then I got violent. One of the foster homes I went to, we walked up to the door and knocked on the door opened, and there's mom and dad, daughter and son. And the son was approximately my age, and he stuck his tongue out at me. Apparently didn't want me there. And so I just nailed him, knocked him down. Social worker said, "This is probably not going to work. I'm going to take him back." And so off we went. One of the foster homes that it was particularly violent. I ran away 14 times, and I know that I ran away 14 times because the father screamed at the social worker, and he said, "This is the 14th time he's run away." The reason I would run away is because I was constantly abused in that family, beaten. And I would run away because I knew, at least for that time, I could have peace. I was approximately 6 years old at the time. And I was running, and one time I ran away, and I specifically remember this one. And the reason I ran away was because we had spaghetti for supper, and I love spaghetti. But I was required to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning at the age of 6 and do work that a 6-year-old shouldn't have to do ever, let alone at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I would be kept up really late. I was kind of a slave, and so I was just really tired, and I fell asleep in my spaghetti. And the father just blew a head gasket and started hitting and beating and all that. And I said, I'm leaving. And I just ran out the door and I ran away. And I knew they'd find me. I knew that. And I knew I'd get beat again. But I knew for that moment in time I'd be okay. And so I'm running. And I sat down behind this garden woodshed. And I was looking up in the sky at the age of 6. And I see stars. And I see a bright, clear sky. And I said to myself, I can remember it as sure as I'm standing here today. I said, there's got to be more to this. This can't be everything. People can't live this way. There's got to be someone up there. And I believe that's the moment when God revealed himself to me. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything about him. I just knew he had to be there because he was there at that moment. All of our politically correct people in our culture were not there at that moment, but God was there. I was brought back to the family. They finally found me. The beatings continued. The social workers would come over, and people would say, well, why didn't you tell the social workers? Well, they didn't believe me when I would tell them, unless I got a really bad bruise. And here's the sad thing. I don't bruise. Is anybody else in the room that doesn't bruise? I don't bruise. And so it was really hard for them to understand. The last straw in that house was I was outside, and I don't know who did it because you'll understand why I didn't know who did it. But somebody came up behind me with a big rock and smashed me in the head right here, and it knocked me out. I still have a flat spot on my head up here. Kind of funny, though. When my kids were little, I'd lay on the floor. They'd roll dice on my head. So that was kind of cool. I was knocked out, and I didn't come back for a while. And when I finally did, I think the mother decided at that point in time, we probably need to stop this. So that's when the social worker came and took me out of that particular home. And I still continued to be violent. I was in 2 gang feeder programs. Do you know what a gang feeder program is? I moved into Port Huron, Michigan, was one of the places. And a gang feeder program is they'll take little kids that are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they'll try to indoctrinate them into what the gang wants to do. And that way, then when they grow up, they're connected. And I was in 2 of those. And the one in Port Huron, Michigan, I recall, one of the things that we had to do is we had to vandalize a school. So we went and we were throwing rocks, busting windows, hitting the windows with bats and things like that. And so that was when they came and the police came several times when I was little, but the police came, and this was a family that probably was higher enough on the social ladder that the police coming to their house is not a good thing. And so I stopped living there. There were no more. The last foster home that I was in, well, the second to last foster home I was in, and like I said, I became violent. I learned to gamble. And so I would hustle kids on the bus to steal their money because the social working program, the way that foster care works is that you get money to foster a child, and you're supposed to spend the money on the child. I never once had a school lunch in my foster existence. I never once had school lunch. So I would learn to gamble and hustle kids and steal their money so I could eat lunch because that was the only meal that I would get often. I mean, I would eat once in a while, but not real often. And so I figured the eating thing out. So I'm all good there. So, but probably one of the things that just breaks my heart, to give you an idea of where I was in one of my foster homes right near the end, and this sweet lady was a foster mother, and I was playing with silly putty. How many of you remember silly putty? It's a great thing. And I was 7 years old at the time, and I take the silly putty and you spread it out over a newspaper and peel it up, and it would transfer the image. And that was so exciting. Wasn't that fun? That was fun to do. And I was always thinking, so I'm go, what, how does that work? Well, while I was doing it, she took it from me. I don't know why, I probably deserved it. She took it from me, and off we went. And I started screaming. I said, I want it back. And she said, no, and I started to chase her. Now I'm 7, she's a grown adult. I started to chase her, and I knocked her down, and I took a belt, and I beat her until she gave it back to me. That's the state that I was in as a child. Mom and Dad came and got me in 1972, July 22nd. It was right after this event had occurred, and they were going to adopt me, Mom and Dad. My dad was here last week. He's an awesome guy. And they were going to adopt me, and the social worker said, I don't think we want you to let you have him. And they said, well, why not? My dad's a Marine. My mom's an Irish farm girl, right? And they said, you have another son. And my mom said, he's 3 years older. And the social worker said, you have no idea what this kid can do, and I'm concerned for your other child's safety. That's who I had become because of the existence of the way things had happened and all of the abuses. In my very last foster home, my very last one will be the one thing that will always I will never forget. All of those other things, getting hit with this and hit with that and knocked down here and all of this, that stuff heals, that stuff goes away. But you know what never healed was the time when my last foster mother knocked me down on the ground. She was a big lady. She knocked me down on the ground, and she just started kicking me and screaming, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, and would kick and kick and kick and kick to the point that I would curl up in the fetal position and just try to get through it. Just try to get through it. And those are the things that still resonate with me in my mind. Got out of that foster home. Mom and Dad adopted me in 1972. They're great people, and they fought the battles, and we went through things together. And I played baseball, and that was, you know what I learned in baseball? If you hit something really hard in baseball, that's a good thing. And so that's why baseball's always been really important to me, because if you hit a school window or you hit another child or another adult, they don't like that. But if you hit a baseball really hard, they praise you and pat you on the back. And so that's what I did. All that time, I was 8 years old when Mom and Dad adopted me. And I was 8 years old, and I didn't even know, by the way, I didn't know how old I was. And one day, Mom and Dad get in the car, and we drive to Myers up in Michigan. Myers started up there, so it's been there a long time. And they say, you sit out here. So I'm sitting out in the front of Myers, and Mom and Dad and my brother Randy go into the store, and they buy stuff. I don't know what they're doing. And they come in, and they cash out, and they take me home. And they sit me down on the kitchen table, and they say, we're sorry, we didn't know today was your birthday. I had no idea what birthday was. I had never gotten a birthday present. I had never gotten a Christmas present. Never seen any of those kind of things. So Mom and Dad created some normalcy in my life. And all of a sudden, we're doing things that normal families do, and I had never done that before, including going to church. I had a couple of other church experiences earlier, but we went to church, and it was a beautiful thing. And I mean, I learned who Jesus was, and I finally knew what his name was. I finally knew who he was. And so I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I was baptized on June 3rd, 1973. And so that was exciting. Now, my personality had already been developed, so it wasn't still good. I still fought a lot during school, mostly with kids, no adults anymore. I fought a lot. And then on April 17th, 1982, and I'm running out of time, so April 17th, 1982, I was in youth group. Dick Baldwin was my youth director, and Dick said, I want you to write your testimony down. And so I sat down, I'm ready to go, because I had been a leader in youth group, not just an attender, I was a leader. And I sat down and I didn't have a testimony, because even though I knew Jesus and I loved him and I had been saved and I truly believed I was saved, I was not living for him. And so on April 17th, 1982, I rededicated my heart and life to Jesus Christ, and I said, I'm going to live for you, Jesus. Went away to college, went to a Bible college, got a degree in mathematics and secondary education. I also have a Bible degree, and God just renovated me. I don't have an angry bone in my body. People call me a big teddy bear. I don't think I'm ever mean. I don't hit people. I don't do any of that stuff, because Jesus completely changed me. Just like Chip and Joanna changed Pawpaw's house, Jesus Christ changed who I am and who I was. If I were to go back and talk to some of those other people, I think they probably wouldn't even answer the door. I wish I could meet that little boy that I hit. I would love to apologize. I wish I could talk to the mother that I beat and some other things I didn't share with you, but I can't. So I just have to leave that in Jesus Christ's hands. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing before you telling you that Jesus Christ can renovate your life completely. And it's only because of Jesus Christ. It's not because of some politically correct who said this and who did what. None of that changed me. If that was what I had relied on, I would have never changed. And I would have been, like my teacher said, I would have been in prison, because that's where they thought I was headed. But Jesus changed me. He used other people. Mrs. Peck was my middle school math teacher, and they started a new math program, and I was going to be in it because I was really intelligent in math. And she gave us this packet, and this will be my last story, but she gave me this packet, and I filled the packet. I looked at the packet, and I'm like, what's this for? She goes, well, Rich, we're starting a new math program, and we think you're really good at math. Nobody had ever told me that I was good at anything. I looked at her, and I thought, well, that's kind of strange. So I took the packet home and I laid it on my desk and said, I'm too good to math. I don't need to do that packet. If they want me in that math class, by golly, they'll just put me right in it. Went to school the next day. Mrs. Peck said, you get it done? No, I'm not doing it. A few days go by, and all of a sudden, all my friends, some of my classmates are gone. Mrs. Peck, where'd they go? Well, they went to the math class. I want to be in the math class. You didn't do the packet. So I'm at home, and I got sent to my room. I don't know why. I'm sure I deserved it. But I'm sitting up there. I'm walling all over the bed and all over the desk and everything, because ADHD kids do those kind of things. And so I'm sitting there, and I see that packet, and I thought, oh, I'm good at math. I like math. Do that. So I did it. Took it in, gave it to Mrs. Peck, and triumphant said, here, I did it. Mrs. Peck said, thank you. The next day, guess where I went? To the math class. And here was one of the most life-changing moments for me that ever happened. I walk into the math class. I'm a sixth grader. I walk into the math class, and I went, and I picture it now, I sat in the second row in the last seat. In the third row in the last seat was Darcy Miller. Darcy Miller looked at me when I sat down, another student. She could have said anything, right? She could have said nothing. She was shy. She looked at me, and she said, it's about time. And I understood right then, other people saw something in me. When you see something in someone, acknowledge it. You never know. When something you do or say can change the life of someone forever, you have no idea. So don't hold on to it. Encourage them. I'm so thankful that Jesus Christ renovated my life. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come.